Leaks are nothing new to the world of video games, and DBD is no exception. Whether it be actual genuine leaks from people saying something they shouldn't have, or just information people manage to gather via data mining, leaks are fairly common and they're usually nothing crazy. Maybe the icons for new cosmetics releasing soon or something small like that. But what if I told you that all the way back in 2019, Dead by Daylight had some of the biggest leaks ever seen in modern gaming? And instead of hackers or data miners being to blame, the fault instead lied entirely on DBD's dev team making huge mistakes back to back, where they didn't just leak small things, but 2 entire licensed DLCs, unreleased features, private development files, and an entire game. Well, it's true, and I'll tell you why after this message from today's partner, NordVPN. Keep your internet activity encrypted and secure from any bad actors, whether that be man-in-the-middle attacks while connected to public Wi-Fi where hackers can intercept your traffic, allowing them to capture your information or even redirect you to phishing sites. Or, even more relevant, NordVPN keeps your IP address masked and safe from DDoS attacks if your favourite game has a habit of leaking players' IPs. Wink wink. NordVPN was the only reason I was able to stream with no issues at all during the height of the DBD DDoSing scandal. Go to nordvpn.com/Ardetha for an exclusive offer for this channel where you can get an additional 4 months for free on a 2-year plan using my link. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there is no risk. So try now at nordvpn.com/Ardetha or by using the link in the description. In order to convey the severity of Behaviour's blunder, we need to set the scene a bit. The year is 2019 and the most newly announced killer was the Plague, which was chapter 11, and for perspective, we're currently on chapter 27 at the time of making this video. Dead Hard still had a dash, Ruin was still the go-to slowdown perk, and the mere concept of boon totems would have been laughed at. And to go even further down memory lane, Survivors still had the old buttery smooth running animations, DBD Mobile didn't exist, and neither did DBD's version of the Battle Pass called the Rift. Things were going pretty well for DBD at the time, as Behaviour was building up hype towards their massive 3-year anniversary event, and little did the public know that they had secured 2 exciting licenses back to back, which was yet to be unveiled to the public, and they even invited some of their favourite creators to go visit the Behaviour offices to get exclusive early access before anyone else. Things would continue running smoothly up until the 19th of March 2019, where patch 2.6.0 released, bringing us the Plague. But while PC and Xbox users were getting a sneak peek into a 2020 simulator, PlayStation 4 users logged on to find something far more interesting than that. Upon switching to a Kill Your Friends lobby, which was the old name for private matches, PS4 players saw 6 new Survivor perks. That's weird. Jane was the new Survivor and she only came with 3 perks, so what were these other 3 random perks? Well, they were named Flip Flop, Buckle Up, and Metal of Man, all 3 perks belonging to the one and only Ashley J. Williams of the Evil Dead franchise, who was not only yet to be released, but hadn't even been announced at this point. While players couldn't take them into public matches since there was no way of obtaining the teachables to make them appear in the blood web for unlock, they were able to equip them in private matches with no issue whatsoever, and got an early glimpse into the absolute carnage that Metal of Man would unleash into DBD's meta until its eventual nerf. Due to the fact that Ash's DLC was only a mini chapter featuring just him with no killer or map, the perks were basically the main course, as each survivor is effectively just a skin. So Behaviour accidentally releasing these perks ahead of time no doubt had a negative effect on the hype for the DLC's release, but that would almost certainly be made up for by just how game-breakingly overpowered Metal of Man was. So a huge swarm of people who wouldn't usually be interested in the DLC bought it anyway, so they weren't at a severe disadvantage for not owning it. I don't know the specifics about the agreement between Behaviour and Ash's license holders, but it would be a safe bet to assume this mistake got them in some slight trouble, but nothing too huge, as Ash himself was not leaked, and the perks and their icons were original art by Behaviour, so they likely got off lightly. While this was definitely not an ideal way for Ash to be introduced, at least the mistake only happened on a minor half chapter, serving as a good reminder for Behaviour to double check that they were pushing the right builds whenever they sent out updates. And Behaviour did in fact learn their lesson. for one single month, up until the 7th of May 2019 in patch 2.7.0. Less than 2 months after accidentally leaking the Ash vs Evil Dead DLC, behaviour's next big mistake took place. And what exactly was that, you may ask? Patch 2.7.0, updated game client to version 3.0.0. Uh-oh, that was not what was supposed to happen. Not only did they push the wrong update, they pushed one that was not due for another 3 entire months, which meant A, the update wasn't even close to being ready for release yet, B, the update contained licensed DLC, updates, and other content that hadn't even been announced yet, and C, as the build was nowhere near ready for release, a retail version hadn't even been built yet, meaning that it was an internal development build of the game that their entire player base now had access to. Considering that they had just made a very similar mistake not even 2 months prior, it is jaw-dropping that they'd not only make that mistake again, but far worse. But how bad was it really? Surely the update couldn't have leaked that much, right? Well, to start things off modestly, upon opening the game, players only found themselves greeted with, well, literally Ghostface himself, completely playable, for free, multiple cosmetic sets, a whole set of his add-ons, and an unfinished mid-development perk for him. This got the community absolutely buzzing, a huge revelation completely out of the blue, right there in everyone's face. At that point in time, Ghostface hadn't even been announced, and yet all of a sudden, there he was. This caught the community by such surprise that people straight up thought that the PC players' screenshots and videos were fake, even though Ghostface was literally right there, plain as day. This was much bigger than Ash's leak for several reasons. First was that Ghostface is one of the most iconic slashers of all time, up there with Freddy, Jason and Myers. Second is that instead of just perks, the entire character was there, playable for free. In fact, not only was Ghostface free, but in that patch, every single DLC, character and skin in the entire game was free, even Legacy Prestige clothes, as once again, it was a development build, which meant it wasn't even hooked up to Steam, it wasn't checking for licenses, and players could simply give themselves everything with a simple command. Which segues perfectly into the next point as to why it was so massive. Players had full access to the developer console, so they absolutely could grant themselves literally everything in the game. They could spawn bots, they could no-clip around the map, add and remove perks mid-match, swap killer abilities mid-match, use infinite deadards, and so much more with no hacks required. All players had to do was type in the command, and the console literally listed out every command for you, then they were free to bring chaos into the game. I'm not sure if anybody was able to get into public matches during the time this patch was live, but people absolutely did run wild in private matches, as we saw in screenshots and video footage. As they leaked the entirety of Ghostface and he was available to play for free, I suspect this landed behaviour in some serious hot water with the Ghostface license holders. But I don't think we ever saw anything happen publicly regarding a breach of the license, so perhaps they got off scot-free or they had to dish out some dollars as an apology. Okay, so they leaked a completely unannounced licensed DLC for free, leaked multiple upcoming cosmetics not just for Ghostface but other licensed characters like the Pig, and made their entire PC player base accidental cheaters. It can't get much worse than that, right? Well, it can. Just like finding out that nearly 85% of people watching this video aren't subscribed. We're getting close to a huge milestone, so if you enjoy the content, help me out with a sub. Well, it turns out that behind the scenes, Behaviour was planning to add something that was, at the time, very controversial, and it was a hot topic in the gaming space at the time, which was none other than a battle pass, which you would now be familiar with as the Rift. I know battle passes are generally accepted as just the standard nowadays, but back then there was a lot more resistance, especially when it came to DBD, as battle passes were generally considered acceptable for free-to-play games to make money. whereas DBD was not and still is not free, so there was even more heat in this game's case. The Rift, much like Ghostface, had also not been announced before this patch went live, so the shock factor was cranked up to the extreme with many strong reactions. And I know it may seem absolutely unbelievable, but the heavy blows don't stop there. There was also another huge leak found within this update, and that was Dead by Daylight Mobile. While Dead by Daylight Mobile is nothing new nowadays as it's already released twice, the thought of that back then was absolutely unfathomable, partially because DBD's optimization was so awful it couldn't even run properly on PS4s, let alone phones, but also because it was yet another thing that had not been announced at all and was now suddenly right there for the world to see. Of course, there wasn't a random mobile client bundled in the 3.0 patch that everyone had, but we now had definitive proof that DBD Mobile existed and had already entered development. Needless to say, Behaviour very quickly noticed their mistake and immediately pushed the correct version of DBD, which was 2.7.0, not 3.0.0, but the damage had already been done. People had already seen Ghostface, better yet played him, the community now knew about the impending Battle Pass and mobile game, and a development build never meant to see the light of day had been pushed to thousands of users. Another thing worth mentioning was that as it was a development build, it did not have easy anti-cheat integrated, which meant alongside everything else previously mentioned, this huge mistake likely caused a huge leap forward in the development of cheats and hacks for DBD, as cheat developers now had a completely safe anti-cheat free environment to test, iterate and improve their cheats. Come to think of it, this is probably the reason why DBD had such a massive cheating problem in 2020. So in the span of just 2 months, Behaviour themselves had managed to have leaks for 3 licenses, Ash, Ghostface and Pig Cosmetics, 2 entire chapters, the addition of a battle pass, the addition of a whole mobile game, a completely unrestricted development build, and fueled the exponential advancement of cheats for their game. Now that's a pretty good job if I've ever seen one.